next on the Modern Homesteader, the 40-day challenge. I cannot believe we are on day 36 already. Well, I am learning a few things in the last 36 days, and including today, I was beginning to look at some of our plants and to figure out some things about how much we really should be growing versus how much we are growing. I was also looking at staking up our raspberries and our blackberry bushes, so why don't you come along? I was noticing just the other day how tall our blackberry and raspberry bushes have gotten. I was looking at this guy. He's got some beetles on him. That is not good news. So I'll have to figure out how to tend to that. Need to get my jar out here and just put them in my jar of dish soap water, kill those guys, but I'll have to figure that out. But I was noticing how big they are and realizing that, yep, we need to go in and have some kind of trellis system or some kind of staking system in place. One of the things as I was researching just the simplest way to stake or to trellis them was that as cute as it was for us to plant them sort of staggered, we really should have been planting our blackberries and our raspberries in a single row. It's much easier to trellis and to stake. It's much easier, especially our blackberries are not thornless, so it's much easier to pick the berries without getting totally in a mess of brambly thorns. So that is our mistake. I thought it looked better, but I should have done my homework and I did not. We are probably, because of that, going to end up doing my cute staggered rows. It's going to be one row here of blackberry and raspberries and one row here of blackberry and raspberries. So I think we can still make it work. I should have researched that before we did it. Still deciding on the kind of trellis we should do. There's some good wooden T-ones that are pretty simple. I also think the welding wire is an easy one if we want to add. Depends on how many we want to end up with. We're at the early stages now, but I'd like to get the infrastructure in place so that if we wanted to grow and have maybe not a 100-foot row, but at least a 50-foot row of blackberry and a 50-foot row of raspberry, we could do that. So we'll have to see what our budget allows and what's best. Hopefully we'll decide in the next few days at least what we're going to do, and then we'll be doing it over the course of the next couple of weeks. Starting a garden is much like starting anything else, like a new hobby or something new. There's a steep learning curve at the beginning. Most of your budget goes to infrastructure at the beginning, and then after that it's just maintaining, and you get to do you're just sort of trying new things and experimenting. Well, we are definitely at the beginning gardener stage, so if that's where you are, I'm sure you can relate. If you are an expert gardener, just listen on for a little bit of a chuckle as I tell you some of the mistakes we've made and some of the things we're doing. One thing that it just for whatever reason never occurred to me was that there are ways to figure out if you really want to grow vegetables for your family and provide fruit for your family. There are numbers that can give you general averages for how much you should plant. For example, I was reading and it said the average per person yearly consumes 456 pounds of vegetables, 365 pounds of fruit, 250 pounds of grains, and then lean meat and eggs is 159 pounds. You can take those to figure out exactly what you need. For example, there's a lot of combinations of fruit that would work, and this is just on a family of like 4, either 2 adults and 2 kids, or 2 adults and a teenager for 3. So obviously it's not for our family. I haven't done that math yet, but this is saying that for one family, they need 1,095 pounds of fruit for the whole year. So if they wanted to really grow most of that themselves, there are so many different combinations they could do it. They could do 100 square feet of strawberries, that's 100 pounds, 100 square feet of different types of melons, that's 200 pounds, 200 square feet of blackberries and raspberries, a couple of sour cherry trees, that's 300 pounds, and 5 dwarf apple trees, that's 800 pounds. That would provide the total number of fruit poundage that they would need in a year. Now, doesn't mean you wouldn't supplement and not want to get the occasional banana from the store and things like that, but just the fact that these numbers exist and that these are things I should be thinking about, I had no idea. So it doesn't really impact our garden as much this year, but it's a good way for us to be thinking about garden space, fruiting trees and fruiting berry bushes and things, that kind of space, exactly what we need. You should check it out and see what you might need for your family as far as quantities and amounts as well. Shoo! Shoo! obviously we need to get our permanent fencing in sooner rather than later to keep these girls out of our garden. There is just so much to think about with the new garden. You have to think about garden space and water and sun. Then you have to think about protection so animals don't eat it. Not to mention what seeds need what, the spacing and all of that. It can be overwhelming to think of it all at once. For example, when we planted our garden this year, I have grown squash in the past with a lot of success. I've done it in containers. When we lived in a neighborhood in the suburbs, I had huge big containers in our backyard and on our deck, and I would fill them with soil and grow squash, and it grew great. And I thought, oh, I'm gonna have more garden space. I'm gonna grow all of these squash plants. Well, take a look. Now, first is the issue of, have I given them enough room? And I believe I've spaced them according to their thinning, but they still look pretty tight to me. But that issue aside, the real question is, does our family need this much squash? I realize that there are average numbers out there for what you should grow. For example, I read that the average family, which we would add a little more to that since we're a family of 7, but the average 4-person family with parents and children, you really only need about 6 or so squash plants to give you all the squash you need for that season. I have way more than that. So it really becomes a matter of garden planning. I've heard people say that before, but I never knew what it meant. Well, now I get it. Doesn't impact us as much this year, but it really is gonna make me think next year on year 2 of our garden, when we have the infrastructure, the space, the water, the sun, all of that in place, then I'll be smarter about what we plant. Well, if the garden means a big learning curve, that means resources. Obviously, a great resource is Google, the computer, YouTube videos. We watch other videos to figure out how those folks are gardening, what they're doing, what tips we can have. Sometimes, though, it's just nice to be able to come out away from the screens, sit, take some notes, look at your gardening book, look at your latest resource from the library or borrowed from a friend, and just make some notes that way. I think John has mentioned it, but you might have your favorite book, The Square Foot Gardening Method, or some of the other methods, Back to Eden Garden, whatever. There's lots of different ways. We have totally enjoyed the, we don't know him at all, but the Markham book. It is Mini Farming, Self-Sufficiency on a Quarter of an Acre. And we have more land than that, but it's good for us to see how he's doing it on a small scale, so that on a small amount of land, so we can try and do some of the things as well. It's just good food for thought. You know, this learning curve, you got to take it in nibbles. It can be overwhelming at the beginning. So I encourage you to just do something. Just plant something. It may be too much squash. It may be blackberries that are planted at a stagger instead of in a row, and it would have been smarter in a row. You can make mistakes just like we are. You can laugh at our mistakes and come along with us. But I encourage you to just take a step. Depending on where you are, it's not too late to put some seeds in the ground. It's not too late to try some things. See how it goes. As you begin to garden, you will see what issues you need to tackle, what things come up, and you will be learning as you go. It's just enjoyable. This is day 36. I am excited about the next 4 days. We hope you'll join us as we finish out our 40-day challenge, and then we'll jump into what we're doing next.